Hi, I'm Mike Maloney, and welcome to another CSRM podcast. Today's episode is hosted by Dr. Greg Linville.
Welcome, everyone, to another CSRM podcast. My name is Dan Stoffer, and I am joined with Dr. Greg Linville and Scott Stedman, and we are continuing our conversation through the book, The Saving of Sports Ministry. We're talking about soteriology. And last time, we began chapter 6 by defining first what a para-ministry was. And then we talked about some really healthy challenges, I think, both for the local church and those para-ministries. And so, Dr. Greg, we're going to dive right in. Tell us why soteriology is relevant when it comes to para-ministries and why we should have these kind of conversations here and why the local church should consider how we could partner together with some of these para-ministries.
The deep background of it all is that what we're finding, sadly, is that a lot of people have now come to the place where saying this sports ministry doesn't work. They're saying we thought it would work, but it's just not being very effective. And what we are trying to help people understand is that it's not that the sports outreach doesn't work, but rather specific approaches, specific methodologies, specific models of it are less effective. I think I want to be careful here, but I have this innate sense that all of them are effective at some level, but most of them are not totally effective, not significantly effective. And their effectiveness could be greatly enhanced. That methodological model effectiveness could be greatly enhanced if they went back to a theological foundation of what soteriology really is. What does it mean to actually get somebody into a faith of Jesus with Jesus Christ, a personal faith? So with that as kind of a background or a foundation, we described last time that the para-ministry model, by and large, tends to be mega event. It's a mega model, meaning they get an elite athlete or coach to give a platform proclamation, a verbal affirmation of the gospel, rather than the 3R approach, repetitive, relational, redemptive, that covers a long period of time. And that those models can either be in an activity or in a mass media. The mega model can be one of those where it's a verbal proclamation by somebody's mouth or a graphic where they write it out. And are we supportive? Absolutely. But what we're saying is we think it can be done better. Now, let's make it even more specific, because that theological model of getting it verbally proclaimed takes place in a couple of ways. One is a lot of our para-ministry brothers and sisters run camps. A lot of them do summer camps, or they will come even into your church and run a camp, or they will provide your church with a league. And in that sense, they are partially doing the repetitiveness. Okay, so they're buying into part of it, so that these para-ministries, they come in and do a camp, like a day camp for you during the summer. They'll bring college athletes and students or coaches, and they'll do your soccer camp, or they'll do a basketball camp or what have you. Or they actually do their own camps, and they will do them. They'll rent a college facility out. They'll rent some other place. They may even have a campsite where they do it. And when they do these camps, it is that we're going to do all this, we're going to have this activity. Sometimes the young person who comes to the camp, their skill is increased, their footwork is better, their ball handling is better, their whatever. But a lot of times, sadly, the skill, the development within that sport it's not done well. And it's Vacation Bible School, which I love and think is great, by the way, but it's Vacation Bible School with a ball rather than a sports camp with a Bible. And there's a difference in approach there. So first of all, get the sport right, get the kid better.
Yeah.
But then what they do is say at the end of the week, raise your hand if you want to love Jesus. And that's it. And it goes back to all that we said in the past few weeks. So when the para-ministry does these camps, whether they do it on their own or they go into a church and do it, they're doing it with the same soteriological foundation. Get them to raise a hand, get a day's decision for Jesus, and they don't plan any way to get those kids involved in growing in their faith. You guys, any experiences with that? Am I saying what's accurate or not?
Yeah, I've definitely seen that. As a local church pastor and local church sports minister, when you partner and they come in and they run a camp. Again, I'm thankful for the resources, thankful for the excellence. Yeah, I think a lot of times the athletes were trained a little bit better. But yeah, the lack of follow-up, and some of that's on us, right? Because we didn't think it through. We thought, hey, they've got resources, they do a great job. Probably have a little bit. I don't have time to run that type of camp or even a knowledge in that particular sport. So let's reach out, let's let them do it. But then no process either way to follow up and to get that athlete plugged in. So yeah, I've seen the frustration there for sure.
There's I'd say that the camps is one of the big ones that they do, the para-ministries. They also do some leagues. That's a minority of the things that they do, but they will do these leagues and they'll do them outside of the local church. And again, at least if they come into the church, either by bringing their athletes in to do a dedicated week, or they give you a league that you can run in your church, at least that is a step in the right direction. But it needs to be followed through, like you said, Dan. If they're doing their leagues outside the church, there's even a bigger disconnect. That's a minority. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but I just would challenge anybody that's in the para-ministry world that's doing leagues outside of the local church to get in a church, connect it to the church. There's something that's growing more all the time, however, and that is this elite sports, particularly for youth. This is manifested in a couple ways. There are some sports ministries that are taking the AAU, the elite travel sport, and providing this for so-called Christian kids to be able to go and have a witness. In the last chapter, there was a whole, what we call a timeout with one of our former board members who is now planting a church using sports rec and fitness. And he very eloquently talks about how once the kid is gone, they're gone, they're not coming back. And that when these ministries take these kids out of local churches and they're gone every weekend to play in these elite sports tournaments, that those kids are learning that it's more important to play sports than it is to be in a church on a Lord's Day, and that they don't come back. And you need to read that. But that's part of the problem with what's happening. I live in an area that I can drive within about 3 to 4 hours and be at almost a dozen facilities that are like $10 million each that are dedicated to youth sports. And that's what they do. They have tournament after tournament, training after training. Some of them either began or are still Christian based. They're trying to do this in a Christian way. Again, the folks that are doing this, your hearts are right, but I don't think you're getting the results that you had hoped for. There's another group that's trying to minister to that they're trying to minister to the people that are going to those tournaments, going to those facilities, and that they are trying to produce curriculum for those people so that the Christian coach who takes their team to this weekend after weekend after weekend elite sports experiences, that at least for 15 minutes on a Lord's Day morning, they have some curriculum to give to the kids, a gospel message. Again, we support this. We think it's great. We love the intention. But why don't we spend more time in creating that tournament to go on a Friday, Saturday, so that they can go to their church on Sunday? Why do we have to do it on the Lord's Day when they're taking them out of the church? And there's one last thing that happens is that there are some that have created clinics or academies. You've got a quarterback academy, you've got a defensive line academy, you've got foot skills in soccer academy, that they're doing this from a Christian perspective, that they get a quality coach, instructor, and they're teaching kids how to get better at their sport, which we love. We think that's great. You got to do it. But if they're standalone, if they're not in a local church, you're not going to get that kid easily transferred into the church. And that's where the growth occurs over many, many years and a lifetime. Your guys' thoughts?
I think it's dangerous when we continue to pull people away from church on Sunday morning in a culture where that's already happening anyway for a variety of reasons. And I think the intensity of really focusing on a sport, on one particular sport and one particular skill, definitely is on the rise. We see that with parents and their children. I would just challenge those in para-ministries, if you're operating this way, to consider Sunday as an opportunity to not pull people away from church, but also to consider, could you bring this to local churches? There are so many local churches who, if they have a sports minister who maybe is wearing 3 or 4 different hats, he's trying to run the youth ministry, she's trying to run the children's ministry or something like that, and also trying to get a sports ministry going, they may not have the time to focus on a particular skill, but you could bring that clinic to that church. Most churches have a room, have a field, have something. Some have a gym. Most churches that I've found, they want to have, they see the value in a sports ministry. They just haven't had the time to develop a plan to actually have that happen. So bring it to the local church instead of pulling away from the local church. Again, there could be a partnership. And again, I would challenge the local church sports minister or a pastor or an elder, consider how you could offer that opportunity, your facility, your field, your parking lot, something, a classroom, where they could host something in your church and then have a plan. If they're bringing people in and they're training up athletes, how can we get them connected? How can we get them saved? And how can we get them to plug into a local church so that they can be a dedicated disciple? So I think the challenge really goes both ways.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Uh-huh. And as we had said when we talked about our previous book about getting the church back in the game, and I related the story that I talked to one of our para-ministry brothers who is a state director for his particular ministry. And in that book, I said, unless you get people involved in a local church, they're probably not going to grow in their faith. And he challenged me and said, you didn't say it's strong enough. Remember that story? And he said, because I have worked with these elite athletes at the college level, and then they go into the pro, and I make sure they're involved in church, and they come back a few years later and they're broke, they're divorced, they're strung out on drugs, and they're involved in a local church. He says it's not enough to just say get involved in a local church, but get in a Bible-based and teaching, Christ-honoring and centered church that is really helping the guys grow. Because if you don't do that, their spiritual life is going to end up on the rocks. And going to church doesn't get you to heaven.
Yeah,
it doesn't. Only salvation through Jesus Christ. We're not saying any of that, but this is the thing that helps a disciple become a disciple, is getting them in church. And our para-ministry brothers and sisters, hear us. We love you. We applaud you. We want to work with you. We want to link arms with you. At our roundtables that are developing around the country, around the world, we're inviting all the para-ministry people to join us. It's not just that we think that you're on the outside. You're not a para-church. You're not on the outside. You're part of us. You're a brother or sister. We want to work.
Amen.
The long-term making of dedicated disciples of Jesus.
Well, and it takes all of us. I'm thinking about, Scott, you're a brand new family minister at a brand new church. You've been in ministries, but you just moved to a new church. How amazing would it be if you had a partnership with all the kids coming through on Sunday morning, and you could say, there's going to be this league or this clinic put on by one of the para-ministries, and then you develop a plan with them.
Absolutely.
And where you're located is a sport crazy community. You know what I mean? Like,
that's the understatement of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. There's opportunity, Greg. So I think your challenge is a healthy challenge for sure. So,
and where we're going to go next time, Dan, is we're going to talk about one specific theological foundational area of soteriology. And it's one that we have to address because it's so prevalent, and it's something that's called carnal Christianity. And we need to deal with that, because that's what a lot of our para-ministry brothers and sisters have been raised on, and we need to just address that. And it may have a little less specific, how do you go do a league, or how do you combine what the para-ministry, but it's foundational to the topic of soteriology. And so that's what we're going to be dealing with next time.
All right. Well, looking forward to another light conversation next time. So we sure appreciate your time here. And if we can help in any way, if the wheels are turning and you are a brother or sister in a para-ministry and you love the idea of partnership, if we could get you connected with a local church sports minister, and if we could figure out ways to make those partnerships happen, we would be happy to have a conversation. So please reach out to us. You can visit us on our website at csrm.org, or you can connect with us on social media. We'll be sure to follow up. And we, again, Scott, get ready to model the book. We want you to buy a copy of the book, The Saving of Sports Ministry. Right there it is. You can purchase that through our website, csrm.org. We'll continue the conversation next time on Chapter 7. Thank you so much for joining us here today. On behalf of Scott and Dr. Greg Linville, I'm Dan Stoffer signing off for today. We'll see you next time. Take care.
The CSRM podcast is a production of CSRM and their production house, Overwhelming Victory. Dr. Greg Linville is the executive producer, and Scott Stedman is the associate producer and editor. To learn more about CSRM, visit csrm.org. For more information about Overwhelming Victory, visit overwhelmingvictory.org. The CSRM podcast is the flagship member of the podcast network Overwhelming Victory Radio. For more information on Overwhelming Victory Radio, or to listen to our partner podcasts, visit overwhelmingvictory.org/OV Radio. For CSRM Podcasts, I'm Mike Maloney. Have a blessed day.